It wasn't too long ago that information was hard to come by. News moved slowly. You'd pretty much only know the people from your own community. And because information was so scarce, the biggest threat to freedom was that information would be censored. But today, the internet has done something remarkable by connecting everyone to a network of information. Today, the world's information is doubling every 2 years. More information has been produced in the last 30 years than in the previous 5,000. By 2020, there will be another 50 times the information as we have today. And sure, there still will be attempts to censor, but information finds a way to emerge. You see, we have a new problem. Our biggest threat to freedom is too much information. There's no reason to ban a book if nobody's reading them. Information has no meaning if it's buried in gossip, distractions, and trivia. We're in a new age of information, and it's easy to get lost. You see, what we really want from information is wisdom. And so what we need are new tools to help create wisdom out of all this noise, make it stand out, and passed along naturally from person to person. Epipheo is a group of thinkers and creatives who are dedicated to discovering these tools and sharing these tools so that in an age of information, we won't get lost.
Wow, exciting stuff. So I'm going to bring to the stage John and Ben of Epipheo. Now, John graduated from Mount Notre Dame College right here in Cincinnati and has a business degree from there. And when John's not working his creative genius at Epipheo, he can be found riding his old red tractor around his Kentucky homestead in Burlington, Kentucky. Sorry, just thought that was the way to say that. All right, he's married with 4 beautiful young children. And so we're going to welcome to the stage John. And then Ben is an author, entrepreneur, adventurer, father, and husband. Definitely not in that order. Loves challenging the status quo. He's been featured on CNN, New York Times, and NPR. Everybody know what NPR is? National Public Radio, is that right? NPR. I listen to NPR because I'm old, all right? So again, without further ado, help me welcome to the stage Ben and John.
Thanks, Michael.
My pleasure.
Okay, guys. Ben and I are going to take a couple turns talking here. I want to start by taking a quick poll. Raise your hands if in the last few days you watched a video on YouTube. And keep them up here. Raise them real high. All right, now keep your hand up if that video helped to change your life or make it better in some way. Yeah, you guys are watching a lot of cat videos out there, aren't you? The point is that there's a serious challenge that faces your generation in the future. The average adult in the U.S. spends over 5 hours online every day. There's 100 hours of video that are being uploaded to YouTube every minute. More than 1 billion people visit YouTube in a month. That means that over 6 billion hours of video are watched each month on YouTube. That's almost an hour for every person on the planet. And that's up 50% from just last year. So the question we have for you is, how do you sort through all the information that's coming to you every day and think deeply about the pieces that are important that can really impact your life? Now more than ever, information is everywhere, but truth and wisdom are hard to find. To combat this onslaught of information, I believe we all need more epiphanies in our life. So what's an epiphany? An epiphany is a discovered truth that allows you to see things from a new or a deeper perspective. When we have epiphanies, we can discover truth, and it causes us to evaluate our personal stories. So let me give you an example of how the importance of story played out in my life. 5 years ago, I had an epiphany that changed the course of my life. My wife, Renee, and I were married for 15 years. We had 3 kids. We lived in a beautiful, safe neighborhood in northern Kentucky. We were active in our church community. Everything seemed perfect, right? Wrong. I had an epiphany that my lifetime pursuit of the American dream and my safe, predictable life just wasn't satisfying. I began to think about how boring my story would be if I read a book about it. Nobody would read it. I wouldn't even read it. And so for the first time, I started to evaluate why I had structured my life in this way. I committed myself to living a better, more compelling story, to take risks from my personal convictions, and to begin to write a better story for myself, my wife, my children. So as a result, a lot of things changed. One of the first things was I quit that safe corporate job, and I joined some friends at a startup called Epipheo, which was doing work in the advertising field. We started small and we built Epipheo out of our basements. Our company was committed to telling meaningful and honest stories in an industry which typically does anything to sell a product, including being distracting and deceptive. Let me give you an example. Sometime when you're watching TV, do an exercise that I often do with my kids. When the ad comes on, think to yourself, where's the lie here? What is this company trying to get me to believe about their product or their service? Is that pair of jeans really going to make me better looking? Is that car going to make me more successful? At Epipheo, we found that companies are willing to pay us a lot of money to take a different approach and not to be deceptive, to tell truthful and honest stories, because these stories are a lot more valuable. We challenge clients to explain why their product or their service really matters and how it can make someone's life a little bit better. If we discover that, we can tell a story about it. So what's happened since my decision 5 years ago to change the course of my story and rewrite it? Well, Epipheo is doing business all over the world. We have 70 employees, and this year we were named as one of the best companies to work for in Cincinnati. And I think it's because we started by pursuing a better story. So today, Ben and I are really hoping to inspire and encourage you guys to take time now to think about the story that you're writing and not to wait 15 years to have that epiphany. Ben?
Oh, man. Good job. That was awesome. So my name is Ben, and I am one of the founders of Epipheo, this company based in Cincinnati that John was talking about. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story so we can get on and talk about your story. So isn't that kind of an interesting idea that John said? And that idea is this, is that we are all writing a story. And what John said about his story, which is really interesting, was he was writing the type of story that he didn't even really want to read. I want to introduce over here, you can't really see in the dark, but 3 of my children came with me. That's part of my story. I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old that joined me. Their names are Dove, Eden, and Seven. I have 2 younger kids that didn't come with me today. But I want you guys to know that we went out for pancakes this morning, and I told them what I was going to tell you guys just to make sure that it made sense and everything like that, because they've all heard it before. Actually, one of the parts of my story that I really like is my 9-year-old, he was 8 at the time, him and I ran 2 marathons this year. So we ran the Cincinnati Marathon. We're hoping to do it again this year. He'll be 9, so maybe you'll see us out there. That's a part of our story. Now, I want to think about you guys' story right now, and I want you guys to ask a question right now. Are you guys proud of, or would you guys read the story that you're writing? Now, I mean, what does that mean? Is it, we just don't want to make it boring, we just want to make it exciting? No, it's a little bit more deep than that. I want to pitch a situation to you guys. Just pretend that there was a movie, and the movie was about this. It was about a bunch of popular kids that were nice to other popular kids. I told my kids that situation. I go, would you guys watch that movie? They're like, no. And we do story train with them, and they said, every story needs to have characters, a setting, it needs to have a plot, it needs to have conflict. Well, what's that conflict in our life? What's wrong with that picture of just popular kids that are nice to other popular kids? Well, it is boring. You know, so that's not an exciting story. Like, and we don't really think about this much because we don't watch movies that are just boring like that. But what we really want to see a story of, something deep, is when a popular kid loves a child or loves another kid or loves a person, or it could be an animal, that doesn't quite deserve it or doesn't line up with what the culture is expecting. So what we're hoping to do today is just really two things. I'm hoping to challenge you guys' story a little bit through my story and just share with you guys some things, some lies. John said that you can watch advertising and you can spot the lie. So there's products out there, they show, man, I love, I don't know if I'm allowed to use this example, but that's how you know it's gonna be a good one. When you see casino advertising, everyone's like super happy, right? And they're like, yeah! Let me tell you, if you ever go into a casino, which you shouldn't, but if you were to, I'll tell you what, people are not smiling in there. It's a lie. It's the same thing if you watch a car advertisement, right? You see the guy and he's like, he has the girl and it looks like his life is just perfect. Well, it's not, that's a lie too. Okay, so we need to learn how to spot some of these lies so that we can live a true life that's actually worthwhile and valuable. Now, in my own life, I'm gonna share a story, and this is a very personal story for me. I just decided that I was gonna share this yesterday, but I think it's actually one of the most valuable things that I have to bring to you guys. Okay, I'm not gonna be rapping up here. I don't have as much hype, but I can give you guys the truth. Now, for me, you guys, it says in the little program thing that I had a documentary made about my life, and actually a business that I ran. So this was a really exciting thing for me because if you think about it, I went to this movie theater. It was really cool. They had this opening night, and this whole movie is being made about me. And I didn't realize this, but at the time that I showed up to this movie theater, I realized that, you know what, one thing that I was really living for that I thought would make me happy was being famous. I don't know if you guys have done this. If you're in your bedroom and you're listening to your favorite band, you do the air guitar, you like kind of pretend like you're on stage and everyone's clapping for you. That feels, you know, I think deep down we all want a little bit of that. We all want, and it's hard to really think about, but we all want people to recognize us and to think that we're special. So here I am at this documentary night, and this whole movie theater is filled with my family, my friends, people that have heard of us just from like the TV and the radio, and they're all showing up to watch this movie. And I'm walking around shaking hands and saying hi to people, and I say hi to this one girl, and I was surprised that she was there. And I said, oh, this isn't her real name, but I'm gonna call her Amanda. Hey Amanda, I'm glad you're here. And she said, of course I'm here. You're famous. And all of a sudden, this feeling came over me, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're only here because I'm famous now. And I realized that what I was wanting this whole time with being famous or being popular or being known by a lot of people was really just to be used by people. Because if you think about it, popularity or fame, it's not that people really actually love you more. If I hang out with, you know, Tom Hanks, and if I was like, hey, look at this picture of Tom Hanks, I'm not actually caring about Tom Hanks. I'm just sharing with you a story that'll make me look better, and I'm just using him. And really what I realized about my life was I spent a lot of energy living for this lie of popularity, of really just trying to be used by people. And you know, I was like, man, that's a real bummer. Like, what a lame story to live for. And I spent a lot of time really wanting to be popular, and I was just thinking for you guys, I was like, man, I wonder if I was in high school, if I knew that that lie was really a lie, how it would change how I treated other people, or who I wanted to hang out with, or who I tried to make laugh, or who I tried to hang out with. And there was a letter that my aunt wrote me when I was your age, and it said one thing. Well, it said a lot of things, but there's one thing that stood out to me that I'll never forget. It said, and she told me that my dad did this, she said, your dad used to hang out and be nice to everyone, not just the popular kids. And I was like, you know what? That's a good story. That's a better story, isn't it? And one thing that I would just challenge you guys with, and I'll remind you this question at the end, is what story are you living for right now? So one thing that we've realized with Epipheo is, I'm just gonna say this truth, that truth and story and love and other things like that, they're more important, they're better than just popularity. Okay, that's just one thing. Now there's a lot of other things we could talk about. You could get into money, you can get into different motives of why you're learning, you get into right and wrong, but that's just one truth that I'm gonna share. Now what we're gonna do today, because there's this theme called Plugged In, and we're gonna talk a little bit about, now that we're trying to dig and understand our story and truth and a true story, a better story, how do we share that with the world? Okay, you guys have a unique kind of challenge on your hands. You guys saw this video that our company made, and it was about this issue that you guys are dealing with just technology and information overload. So they asked the question in the beginning, And I'm going to use you guys as help a little bit. We're going to make this a little interactive. Okay, so I'm going to ask for all of your help. We're going to use all of you guys. Can they turn the lights on, or what do they do? But can we have everyone stand up real quick? So this is what I'm going to do. We're not picking on any one person here, but I want you guys to look around, and I want, if you sent less than 5 text messages, or sorry, let me change that. If you received less than 5 text messages yesterday, I want you to sit down. Okay, so the people that are standing got more than 5 text messages yesterday. If you think you received more than 10 text messages yesterday, I want you to sit down. This is less than 10. So if you're standing up, you got more than 10. Just guess. It doesn't matter if you're like exactly right, but maybe you should think of a number right now so at least we're honest. Okay, so these people got more than 10 text messages yesterday. That's cool. We're not saying this is bad or anything. We're just trying to learn to get a feel for the number because you guys texted it in, and we got some numbers that we pulled online too. Okay, if you think you got less than 20 text messages, sit down yesterday. Be honest. We're helping the group here. Okay, if you got less, let's try and cut out the crowd a little bit. If you got less than 50 text messages, and keep in mind, you got to count every text message. Like if it says LOL send, that's a text message. All right, less than 50, sit down. All right, the last one we're going to do. If you think you got less than 100 text messages, sit down. All right. Okay, good. Can you guys all sit down? Thanks for being honest, you guys. And you guys, we're not bashing anyone. I just want you guys to look. There's a lot of text messages. Now I'm going to ask you guys one question about the text messages that you guys got yesterday. And this is just for yourself right now to answer this question. And we're going to take like 10 seconds, and I want you to just think about it. I want you guys to think about one of those text messages that you got. Maybe like the most important one. Do you guys even remember it? John asked the question, how many YouTube videos did you guys see yesterday, and how many of them changed your life? Now, in terms of those text messages, there's an interesting study that came out because one of the problems that we deal with in working environments with the internet is people get too much email. And they said, the number one reason they realized of how to send less email, because people are sending a lot of email, it's wasting a lot of time, is instead of the way to cut down on getting less email is it's actually amazing. You send less email. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's probably the same with text messages. You guys understand how it works. It's like, hey, and then it's like, hey, what's up? Send. And then it's like, nothing, send. Cool, send. Just checking, send. And that's how a conversation goes. Now, my point is, once again, I'm not saying that's bad, but I want to ask you this question. How many of those text messages changed your life yesterday that you received? Now, if you think about this, my guess is we're talking 0 or 1, but probably closer to 0. And when I say change your life, I mean actually change the rest of your life. I'm not being hyperbolic here. I'm not trying to be all exaggerated. I'm really asking a question because if you guys think back, I'm going to ask you another question now. I want you to think back to a time in your life when you heard something from someone that actually did change your life. Maybe someone told you you were beautiful. Maybe someone told you that they loved you. Maybe someone told you that they believed in you and that you could do it. Maybe someone told you that they were going to be there for you. Maybe someone called out something specific about you. And this isn't just high schoolers, of course. This is to the adults and everyone. Words can actually change our life. Isn't that such a cool thing? Now, kind of the question I'm just going to throw out there, the observation I'm going to make for you guys, is if you're getting 50 or 60 or 100 text messages. And I actually Googled it yesterday, and another person Googled it. And if you Google how many text messages does a teenager get, it'll say either 60 or 82, something like that. Okay, so we're spending, that means if we're getting 60 or something text messages, and this isn't just text, this could be Facebook, this could be email, but we're typing, we're saying a lot of words. But if you're getting 60 or 80 of these things, and if they're not changing your life, there's a really good chance that if you're sending 60 or 80 of these things, you're not changing anyone else's life. Now, if I were to ask a question, who wants to change the world? I don't know how many people would raise their hand, but let me ask another question. Who really, really doesn't want to change the world at all? That should be no one, right? I mean, if you're really honest, no one wants to just be on this earth and then leave be gone and having not changed any person, anything, or, you know, it's like no one even remembers you. That's terrible. So I think one thing we just need to ask ourselves with these tools of technology, if we're going to be plugged in, is we ask this question, what is the technology for and how do we change people's life? So this is my challenge to you guys. After you guys are evaluating your own life, and you're just trying to live a better story, and you're trying to think, you know, what are the lies? Spot the lie in your story. Now that you have that, when you start to get that, how are you going to help change the world and change other people's lives? And may I pose to you, this is just a thought. Maybe it's not text messages. Maybe that's not the best way. Maybe it's not Facebook. You know, like Anthony said, maybe it's actually like with your hands. You know, you're actually going out to your community, you're doing something with your body. And I want to share a few ways that my life has been changed. Is someone pulled me aside and they said, hey, Ben, you know, I really appreciate you. And they looked me in the eyes and they said that. Now, like I said, you guys got to keep in mind here, we're not saying text messaging is wrong or bad. We're not saying Facebook is wrong or bad. We're not saying the internet is wrong or bad. We're just saying if you guys want to change the world, you got to be able to think about what are the tools that I'm going to use to actually change it. And think about the things that have been said to you and how that changed you. You know, I work with my kids right now, and we're exploring a very simple thing. I got a postcard from somebody in the mail, and it wasn't even someone that I really was that excited about or cared about, but I didn't want to throw it away because I was like, man, this is a postcard. Someone paid like 43 cents to get this to me, and a human actually walked up to my mailbox and stuck it like next to my door. So I like kept this thing on my desk for almost 2 weeks. And for you guys, isn't it cool to think that you could actually write a postcard to a friend? Maybe it's the person sitting next to you, maybe it's a friend at school, and you could say, you know what, I really value your friendship. You're a really beautiful person. I think you're really cool. And I really like you, and I'm glad that you're my friend. Now think about that. How would you feel if you got that type of postcard? Or that type of letter? A little bit bigger commitment, you gotta find an envelope. It's like gonna be 50 cents to mail one of those. How would you feel if you got one of those? Is that something you'd want to get? So these are just two examples, you guys. We're not going to go any further into this, but I just want to share with you that the tools that you use are actually really important. That's part of what we've done with the internet is just asking this question. How can we take a message that's important and communicate it in a way that actually changes people's lives? And you guys can do that today. That's just really cool. So the worst thing that can happen, though, there's two problems with the advertising that we face. And John talked about those really briefly. One was that they're lies. Okay, so there's a bunch of lies out there. And the other thing that the video talked about is there's a lot of distractions. So what I would ask you guys as you leave here today is just to think about two questions. One is, what story are you living for? And the second is, how can you communicate that? And as you're thinking about that second question, how can you communicate that? Think about how you can contribute to truth, or this is what Epipheo is about, and my life actually is truth and story and love. How can you communicate a message of truth, story, and love, or something that you think is equally important, in a way that changes people's lives and not just add to the distractions, not just be another one of the 60 text messages that your friends get tomorrow? And that's something that we're really excited about as a company. We're excited to be here in Cincinnati. We're excited that you guys are here dedicating a whole day of your life to kind of think about some of these things and learn about some of these things. This is really exciting. I can't wait. I was telling my kids that maybe in 10 years as we walk around and we're seeing you high schoolers working around and being around the city of Cincinnati, we'll be able to see how you guys have helped change the world too. So thanks for being here today, guys.